So I wanted to kind of show, because my work seems to be completely like, how does this person do this work, and then do this work, and then do this work? I thought maybe it'd be kind of neat to show you like the progression from 2001 when I first came to Columbus and showed my first set of, started working in this space, and show how each work evolved to the next work in a logical progression. Like, you know, I'm all about physics and math, and for me it's very clear, but sometimes it's not very clear to, to people looking at the end result. So, but if you were in my studio, which I brought today, all over the table, some of the stuff at the bottom, in the basement area, you can kind of see how I play in the studio and also how the work kind of is created. So let's start. So, what kind of artist am I? Well, again, I have the background in math and physics, an MFA in new media, and I love working with computers. I've been doing that since I was a teenager in the old TRS-80 days. And the kind of work I do, I think I call myself a maker instead of like an artist. I mean, I feel like there's different ways of exploring the art community, and myself, I really love the materials. I love exploring what the materials can do or what they can communicate. And so in a lot of ways, I feel like I am a maker. That's, I feel like that's where I am. Let's see if we're going the right direction. The type of work I do is really process-based. I really kind of explore either ideas or rules or whatever it is that comes to my mind when I'm sleeping or mostly in the shower, and then I will iterate or do it over and over again. I'll try to perfect it. I'll allow all those failures to combine or culminate into something successful. I like thinking about objects as forms of ways of communicating something outside of what they are. So some of the artists that I really love are Tom Friedman or Sherrie Gallerie or Doho Su, and all these artists kind of use like the form, but they use it outside of what its kind of natural idea is, but it's still informing the new work. And for me, I think that too. And I love to explore, I love to play. And so you'll see some of my studio today. You can see it's just set up it's just like a giant kid's playground with lots of like stuff that could cut your hand off or burn you or blind you or acid or everything else. Rules, I love rules. I mean, not like kind of rules that like stop you from doing things, but the kind of rules that actually allow you to have a framework in which to like push the boundaries, right? To me, it's all about process again, so the rules kind of help, like some of the pieces that I've had, and I'll talk about later, are completely rules-based. So the rule is the art, and the last solo show I had, I tried to use that idea. So those of you who came to see that show, which was What Color Does the Letter Z Make, that was, the rules were the work, and the work on the wall was just whatever's left over after you go through those rules. It's a little bit like a Damien Hirst who has a dot painting rule. The rule is, the set of rules that Damien Hirst made is the art, and therefore he can give it to a factory and have those things made. So, a lot of things, sometimes people ask me, well, how did you come up with this idea? How did you make this? I mean, a lot of the work I've done has been, especially artists, even in the past when I was a painter, people would say, okay, well, how'd you do this? This is incredible, or like, it's really technically done, or old master's technique. I mean, for me, it is, I do love making and I do love the construction of the work, so this is kind of what this talk is going to be about. Iterate, there's a definition. It's kind of the idea of feedback. And so you will see how each of these works that I made kind of feed back on itself, and the problem that I solve from the work that it needs a problem to be solved kind of leads to a new body of work, which then leads to a new body of work. And that's what this talk should be about. So, starting here, this used to be Gallery 5. Don't show this to Sherrie. And this is the kind of work I started out with. This work is just I was a figurative painter, oil on canvas. I used thousands and thousands of binary prime numbers for the backgrounds for some of the works that I did, so that my mathematical influence was there. So for me, prime numbers meant something. They kind of like the idea that the prime numbers, as you get bigger in the series, you become less of them. And I think of that as like the ability to make memories. We get older, time seems to compress, and maybe it's because we were making memories as if the prime number sequence was the way we make memories. So I would use formulas, I would use these kinds of Fibonacci sequences as metaphor in these paintings. And I'm going to the next one here. So here's another painting, Autumn Boundaries, and you can see a lot of the mathematical elements there, the prime knots, some of the number pi, the number phi. So again, all these background from physics. Again, thousands of prime numbers in this piece, right, in the backdrop, but these are all done in. And these are really small in 12-point font that I would substrate it. This is the number E, so, and then field of corn, kind of E is a number that's used in growth and decay. It shows, so they're kind of incorporated in that way. And then I switched, unfortunately for Lynch, who was very angry. A little bit. I switched to encaustic, like, because it was funny. Like, why I switched to encaustic? Well, I'm a painter. I love the surface of paint. I love the control. I love my fan brush. It's my favorite thing. But there's something about encaustic, and if you come up here after the talk, you can actually see what I'm talking about. It's got this ability to be paint. It's the ability to be sculpture. It has the ability to be so many different things, right? And that's what I found really exciting about it. Plus the surface is gorgeous. It's like wax, which is like skin. So it just drew me in and I just wanted to start playing. And so before I move on, I was like, maybe I should tell you what encaustic is. So encaustic is beeswax, which is just wax pellets from bees, which we're having fewer of, that's more expensive. Dimar varnish from trees. You use heat to melt those together to create this hockey puck called encaustic. Depending on how much varnish to beeswax is harder or softer, and you add then pigments, I use powder pigments, to the mix to create, in essence, your own paint. Now this is a medium that's been around for a long time, since the Egyptians, but kind of it was brought back in with Jasper Johns and his flag. And although there's a big movement with encaustics even now, people starting to use it. It's become a lot, in the last decade, it's become pretty prevalent in the art community. And what do I love about it? And again, I was talking about that these are some of the panagrams I had from the Sherrie show 2 shows ago, not the last one, but the one before that. And again, you can carve it, you can etch it, you can throw like film in there and collage it. You can cast it like into forms, right? It has all these abilities. It's amazing. It's like, I love this stuff. This is a detailed shot. I used an actual magnet in there to create the lines for the electromagnetic field using iron filings. You can see you can do that fonts. Just scratch it, remove it. It's just, it's fantastic. Right? There's some film from our innocent students. And again, casting was really gorgeous. And so this was a show I had here. It was called Segmentation. I'll probably have a slide for that. But the things that I did not love as a painter, you could not achieve smooth shading, and I could not create photorealistic work. As you saw, the paintings that I was doing were all figurative, right? They were all like, and I wanted to do that again. I wanted to embed text. I wanted to do a figure. I wanted to go back to that. And with encaustic, you can't, because the way encaustic works is you need a big hot plate, and then everything has to be melted. And so you take your brush and you put it in this hot melted wax, just like candle wax, and then you put it on the canvas and it just instantly sets. There's no drying, there's nothing else. But you can't blend that. It's pretty much that. So if I had been an impressionist or expressionist, that would have been fantastic. But I was not an impressionist, or I was traditional old masters technique. I could blend blue from one corner of the canvas to the other using just like, my fan brush. So I just tried to figure out, okay, how can I get this encaustic to do what I wanted? By the way, this was the first encaustic show I ever had. It was in this gallery, and it was Gallery 5. It was called Segmentation, and you can kind of see some of the elements in the backdrop there. So I was exploring the idea of what can I do, right? And I had been casting, and this is a piece that I would say, this is the piece that made the crayon works, in part. And so I brought it, because it didn't sell. Again, it was not very happy. But this is the piece, and it's composed of hundreds and hundreds of little fingers that I cast individually and then melted to the backdrop. So in a lot of ways, if you can think of it, it's a lot like the crayon sticking out, right? Moving out. So
to the other end.
I mean, I wasn't thinking of crayons at the time, but I knew what encaustic could do, and I was playing with the potential of that medium. Let's see. So what I did at the time was I love computers, and computers were bad at the time, so you actually could see the pixel, right? Not anymore, because everything's retina display, meaning you can't see pixels, so there are no more pixels. These are the last pixels you'll ever see. Anyway, so I thought, okay, I could actually cast these things like the crayon, like the fingers, as little wax mosaic squares, which is what I did, as you can kind of see in the backdrop there. The problem was it looked perfectly, it made a photorealistic image, and it looked perfectly like a mosaic. And so what is the point of using wax when I can just go get glass or something else and make a mosaic? So I was still not happy, although it was a eureka moment. But again, it was not what the wax needed to be. And then came Christmas with melody, my God. And that's when I also chopped off my finger a little bit. But so I was building this box for her. And putting all these artist materials so that she'd have them in this cute little box in my garage. And I was taking out the crayons, and I noticed that, well, I just noticed the crayons, right? And wax, mosaic, fingers. Duh. Then I created my first encaustic piece. It's called Untitled 6500, which is how many crayons it took to actually make this. I had to make everything from scratch. I had to make the molds, I had to make the frame, I had to figure out the process. I had to make the encaustic for this stuff. I had to figure out how to get the image to be photorealistic. It was just a huge 6-month thing to create this to create this one piece. And then I gave it to Art for Life. So, and to kind of just bring it out into the world, because no one had done this before, and I thought it was fantastic, because the moment I revealed this to myself in the kitchen, I knew that this was just fantastic. I was excited, it was interesting, so I wanted the rest of everyone to see it, so I put it up in the auction for Art for Life, where it made a big buzz, if you guys remember it from a long time ago, if you remember that. Yeah?
So the thing on the left is a close-up of a portrait with a portrait on the right.
Right, the portrait on the right is the full piece, and then you can see a close-up of the crayon. And see, so after that, I had a show here. This was during the transition for Sherrie Gallerie. So Sherrie Gallerie became Sherrie Gallerie here and took over from Lynn, and she inherited a couple of us artists, right, along with the building and the lease. So we kind of came along. And Sherrie was delighted to take us on, and so my first real crayon show was with the Sherrie Gallerie 4 shows ago. And we showed the work, and it was really successful. People loved the work. These are the 2 second earliest works of people I know. To the left is Arnie, and to the right is Charlie. Both photographs that we had taken of colleagues at Denison that were happy once they saw the work. In fact, Charlie actually bought his own piece at the time, which was great because now he was at a point where he could afford it. So I wanted to take you a little bit into my studio and show you how this is made. So how do you make these? I don't know. This is me in my studio, right? And I'm working away. And so what I do is I use rice cookers, and I make the encaustic medium, which is like I talked to you with the beeswax. And I'll actually mix each of the pigments specifically to the color that is needed for the piece. So when I think of a piece like this banana piece or the lemon piece, what I'll do is I'll take a photograph of that. I'll set up a photograph. I'll reduce the resolution. I'll index the colors, which means I'll be able to catalog exactly what colors are needed where. Yes, it's my physics and math thing, right? Rules. And then I'll actually use these rice cookers to actually mix each of these colors by hand, and then I pour them into a mold. This is an example of the mold you're more than welcome to see. So, and I can make, this has about 100 crayons that I can make at a time. You can go up to 250 for the larger molds that you see there. And that's me continuing to work. So, any questions? Or
How often can you use the molds? How often can you repeat them?
I made these molds about 6 years ago, and I use them continuously. So these things are great. Mold Max 30 for those artists here, awesome. You should definitely buy that stuff. What I then do is create the frame in which the work is done, and I work from the back because I have my map that tells me what crayons to go where, because it's not something that I can do. I use gravity to keep everything in place, just like the grocers do with the oranges, right? Anyway, this is another view. This is a Hilton piece that I was making, so if some of you have stayed at the Hilton or gone there for the great mussels that they have, you might have seen this piece there. And that's me. And pretty much listening to NPR or audiobooks on tape, at this point in the process, it's very soothing, kind of like painting in oils, just kind of like zen. And I just kind of zen out. And you can kind of see the way the objects are kind of arranged. So each bin has its own number, that kind of thing. So, and it doesn't look like much from the back because everything's kind of janky and in and out. But I rely on the fact that I put in place some rules, and those rules are going to give me what I need. This is in my studio, and then so what I do is I'll take the piece and I'll blowtorch the back until it's pure liquid. At which point I will then immerse a piece of wood that's got a stapled aluminum backing, so into the wet molten liquid of wax, so that it all adheres and sticks together as one solid object in the back, with the idea that it'll be good over time. And that's me doing stuff in front of my camera. And this is an example of the back actually being melted, a little bit more of a close-up here, so you can kind of see what I see. And the wax melts through the crayons to the water bath that I have it set in, so the water actually protects the tips sometimes. So if you can imagine me working all my butt off to get these crayons cast, to get these things in order, to create all this, and then it comes to the point where I melt it and it just melts through and destroys it. I've got a lot of those too. So, and it's really scary, and I usually leave this for last. All these things were the last 2 weeks so that I wouldn't freak out, but I just could not get to the point where I wanted to melt these pieces until the last minute because I was just freaking out because I knew they would probably mess up. Anyway, so that's a little bit of the process. I did this piece just to show you the Melody series, and I sped it up quite a bit just so you can see that it actually is being made. But anyway, you'll see the melody.
So those are just stacked; those aren't into a frame.
They're just totally loose until the time that they're all melted. So, do you guys have any questions?
How do you turn that so that you can melt that?
I have it currently on a piece of glass, but normally I have it against a wood panel, and it just at an angle, and so everything kind of just gravity.
Bro, I saw that on the last one, but this one.
This one's on glass,
Okay.
And so I put the
it's
camera.
It's pushing against glass. Okay.
This was supposed to be this is to show you guys.
It's me.
Got it.
Yeah. And there's me. You guys have any questions?
I have a question. Has it ever turned out that your mapping is not, that it's come out and you've been that is not what I expected it to look like?
Yeah, well, sometimes I forget that everything is backwards. You know how you flip something? And if I had been putting text or something in, I'd be in big trouble because all the letters would be backwards. But luckily, as humans, nobody notices that if everything is well balanced. But there are pieces that I forgot to flip it, in the computer before actually turning it in. Anyway, but nobody notices. And yeah, there are things that are more successful than others, but because everything is loose, I can still go back in and fix it, which, one pixel at a time. And there's not that many pixels. This one has about 2,000 pixels. So this was a show that I had at Sherrie. I think it was 3 years ago. Or not 3 shows ago. Maybe it was 4 shows ago. Okay, that's a bad slide. I don't know how that got in there. That's the slide. So the other problem I had was all those little beautiful details and pieces of information that I used earlier in my paintings, all the formulas, all the text, DNA, genome sequencing, all that, I wanted to put those in there too. So I'm like, well, how do I put text into these things now that I've created this crayon thing? Well, I could put the letter T and it would be about this big, or I could actually go T and it still would be about that big. So I had to come up with an idea of like, how can I actually do this? And what I didn't know I had control over, because I make the crayons myself, and I know where each crayon is going to be ahead of time, I knew color and I knew location. So using that, I came up with the idea of a color alphabet. And so I went online to go get the standard color alphabet that should be out there. Those of you who are in electronics know that there's a standard color set for resistors, right? So well, I just was going to go out and just use the standard color alphabet. There was no standard color alphabet, so I had to invent it. So again, this was a little while ago. So I invented the color alphabet. I chose colors based on my perception that I've got full color vision, and I used the mapping of how often the letters turn out to be in English, like the letter E is orange. I felt orange was the most easy to recognize color, and so I picked all the colors that were easiest to discern as the letters that were more frequent to occur, so that it would be easy to read this language. I really wanted this language to be legible. That was super important to me. Unless you're a male, in which case 1 in 10 men are colorblind and you can't read this language at all. But you're as well.
So did you choose for A, E, I, O, the vowels, did you choose the more primary colors and then variations of those?
Exactly.
Instead of starting with the primary colors as A, the vowels?
Right, T and E are the most frequent letters in the alphabet. So I used E as orange, I is pure yellow, O is pure red, so exactly, I used the letters that are going to happen most often, I made them the most obvious, based on, because we as humans are really bad at deciphering colors. We're really bad at, we don't have good color memory, we're not trained to remember colors. There's just so much, there's so many problems with color alphabet, there's no wonder why I couldn't find a standard. Right, at the time.
Did you patent the color alphabet?
No, I actually gave it away for free online and let everyone use it. So, because that's just what I wanted to do. I wanted to make it available. So I have the font that I developed for it, and I have a website where people can go type in stuff, download the font, and pretty much make a book or use it. And I've had it used several times. Like for instance, a gentleman in England created a book on text and actually used the color alphabet to not only put, make the edge here so that it would actually say the name of the book and the author, but he used it throughout to show that fonts don't need to just be, black and white and shapes. They could actually you could think of them as color. And you can see how this is all following, right? We started with painting, and then we got fingers, we got crayons, now we have the color alphabet. Am I taking you through this okay?
Yes.
Okay. Good. So I used that text information. On the right is a picture of Euler, and I used the numbers from the resistors to create Euler's number. And so you kind of have this interlaced portrait of Euler, the mathematician, and his number that's named after him. For the series in the middle, I used the names of girls or boys that were common in 1968 to create a series called the Lost Children series, where the text looked like little DNA sequences, but in actuality it was boys and girls' names which you could read. And then finally I took it to the full length, and I created a Hamlet piece, so it's Hamlet's soliloquy, to be or not to be, where a poem by Rilke was embedded in the piece, so that it was a very romantic piece, and I thought a romantic poem would be really nice. So, and then this is a detail of that Lost Children series, and if you could read the color alphabet, you could read those names. And that's a close-up of Euler. And again, this is just the resistor stuff, so this is standard, so everybody should agree. But then I thought, okay, well this is a cool thing, I have it, I made it. I didn't patent it, but like nobody else is using it. So I might as well take it outside and start exploring some ideas about like the color alphabet. And so I went ahead and I made something, I started playing with encaustic again, but this time I incorporated the color alphabet as pangrams in the series. So I created a series where it kind of shows off the color alphabet. A pangram is a sentence that contains all the letters. So designers know that if you create a font, you kind of want to show off all those fonts. You don't want the letter Z kind of just not there. So you use something called a pangram to actually show yourself, show it off. So I created an entire series called Pangram, and they look gorgeous. I got that. Sherrie's still looking, so it's a word. I also created a book that I brought, so you'll be able to see it. It's by Wittgenstein. It's called Remarks on Color. Ludwig Wittgenstein is a philosopher, and this is an example of not only this is a handmade book, but this is also an example of how the text looks once you download it from the website and then incorporate it into something like, a layout. And then finally the mating jacket, which I did bring.
Want to get it?
Yeah, you could. I thought this was really fun. After doing a lot of research on color, I found that men are more 1 in 10 likely to be colorblind, and women are only 1 in 100 likely. So I thought I'd play with the idea of the gender nature of color by creating a mating jacket that had come on innuendos, like, hey baby, what's your sign? And I actually wrote them all over this jacket. So that maybe I could one day walk into a bar and but I don't think it was that successful, but you guys can tell me, because here it is. For whatever reason, nobody bought it. I'm thinking.
Oh yeah.
You're 1 in 10 likely not even to see, be able to read all this stuff. I was playing with the idea of being a peacock, or all these things that we think of in the color in the world of nature. Like women are able to see more colors, which is really cool, right? So I took the idea of this color alphabet and took it and transcended it. And then there was where else could I go with it? Well, so I decided, oh, by the way, this is Hamlet entirely. On the left, and then this is the close-up view, which you can do from my website. So, but anyway.
It's not encaustic though.
No, this is just printed on printer paper. But you can kind of see, you can still read it legibly, but that's what it looks like. It's in English. So I took it to the final conclusion here, and that was the last show we had, which was the title paintings, where I always have a problem as a painter, trying to figure out what title should I call this. I don't want to be didactic, I don't want to call it Apple One, or Girl with a Bucket, or something. And it's Girl with a Bucket. I want to be clever, but then too clever is not good either. So I thought, artists always have problems with titles. I spent 3 months coming up with 100 different titles, and then I just developed a set of rules with my color alphabet, knowing that I wouldn't have to paint a single painting. I would just use the rules. So here's an example of that rule. I spoke the titles out loud. This is a visual voice.
Alphabet soup.
Yeah, so I did that. And I was able to take that waveform and deconstruct it into the actual letters alphabet soup. And you can kind of see where the space is. I left it white. And then this is what that piece looks like. I didn't have to think about it. The title was the piece. Right? And so we had an entire show, and of course Sherrie was freaking out because I told her, no, you can't put the title in your work. She's like, well, how's anybody supposed to actually buy that piece? Well, they can point at it, or they can tell you what the word is. And she's like, no, you have to make a key for it, Chris. I'm like, okay, make a key. So that's what I did. You can kind of see the little color wheel key that I did, which is a color wheel alphabet. Really weird. And it was great. A lot of people had a lot of fun trying to figure out what the titles were. During the opening, it was just amazing. I thought the gallery looked gorgeous, because these pieces are just so beautiful, and they're just automatic. I didn't have to think about it. I love this series, right? A cue from Damien Hirst. Although it's still all encaustic and wax, so it's not just as easy as painting stripes. Encaustic is a labor, a huge labor. But if you want to see some of those works, this is formaldehyde cabbage. This is upside down. This is not formaldehyde cabbage. I always tell people, please don't hang stuff upside down. And this one is a bird in woman's hair. So these are some of the crazy kooky titles. One of the titles was like, "This is not a vertical striped painting." And the other title was, "This is not a horizontal striped painting," where they really were. So like, it was just kind of funny. Okay, I must have touched something. Let's see. Okay. So that brings us to today. I hope everyone's still engaged enough where you're not, I know you guys are standing, I'm sorry. Anyway, I thought for this new body of work, I was inspired by the old masters. I had been thinking about like, okay, what do we do? Artists that are kind of stuck at a space and time where they're not sure what to go, where to go next. A lot of times they go back to the studio and they just start setting stuff up and photographing it. And that's like what the old masters did. When they were done, sometimes they would just kind of revert back and start stacking stuff that they found, you know, skulls like they would have, I don't know, which I have no idea why, and I don't know who it is. So I started stacking stuff and lighting things, and I just really fell in love with the process of just setting up the lights. It was so meditative. Setting up the fruit or the objects and just photographing them. And I have thousands and thousands of photographs with the idea that I would then take them and translate them into the crayon. I found that what worked the best was the fruits. And so I started to tend less towards the skulls and the big lead pipe that I had, or the glass weird beakers. I have tons of beakers. I have microscopes. I have like small dead animals. I've got everything in my studio, but if you were a kid, you'd love it. So, and then I started focusing on the fruit instead. And I took these objects, and you can kind of see, I have to really work. This is gorgeous, right? But when you take something and you reduce the number of pixels from 1900 across, 1900 pixels, to like 50, you tend to lose something, right? And that's the hardest part of this process was, how could I photograph this, crop it and compose it so that the photographs would, you know, the images, so the final pieces would do justice to the photographs, which is really difficult. So, this is my watermelon. I really love these photos. I wish I was a photographer though. But I didn't win anything for photography, so. So this is an example of the process. So I have my map, I have my crayons, I've got my photograph, and then I can go to work, and you saw how I did that with my video. So these are some examples of the nasty plates that I have down in the basement. This is the peaches that I have, and you can see that each one of the peaches is indexed so that I know exactly what bucket to pick when I need it. So.
And that's done with a computer?
It is done in Photoshop, but I have to manually do it because this is not a rectilinear grid that I'm working with. It's a hexagonal grid. So I have developed a square root of 2 thing that I use and the interlace thing that I use to kind of get the pixels to be offset and also to be accurate. Because the more accurate you can be, you guys might not notice, but like this is like one of the reasons I feel like I'm doing a good job at this, and nobody's just like, oh, somebody's just reproducing this work. No, it's like every pixel is super important. I make the casting exactly the right color, and I make sure that it's exactly the right place before I start. So, good question though. But yes, everything has to be done on the computer because once I've gone through the process, it's just so impossible. So, one of the cool things about encaustic, I brought this up originally, was that the fact that it can be molded as well as it uses paint, which is why this is kind of 3-dimensional sculpture still. And specifically for this show, I really love the idea of deconstructing or removing the color from the surface of the actual fruit, which is what you see in the bowls, and actually putting them into the crayons themselves, and kind of taking them off. Okay. And that brings us to almost the end of the talk. Because this is where the newest work is going. And maybe this will help you see where I am going next, or maybe not. I have no idea where I'm going. But like, so these are the crayons that you see below you, but this is what you see when you melt the back. This is what's behind these crayons before I stick the fuse it. So watermelon, apple, and the banana, right? And it's gorgeous, and guess who got to see it? Me. That's it. Yeah. So I really find this kind of just seductive and beautiful. I love the looseness. It's no control, but I really don't care because someone's going to stick something in it. So like, I don't care. Like, but then I started thinking, okay, maybe I should care, maybe I should start exploring that process, because this just looks so good. And so I use it as a screen background. So I started with this piece back here, which we titled Becoming. We titled everything the day of the show. Where I did all my handmade crayons into the opposite color or to a complementary color, and then I physically put them on a board, one by one. This is how retentive I am. And I melted each one with a hot, what do you call it, soldering gun, before I then took a blowtorch and an iron to the whole thing. And you can kind of see that's with the iron, and so the wax melted down. And then that's a work in progress before the iron. And then from that, we got that.
So you use the same length crayons
I do.
to create that?
Right, and they melt down so that they're about a half an inch or a quarter of an inch worth of pure wax. I then have to scrape it back with a giant razor blade, the whole surface, to get it to be flush, but it reveals the crayons and then all the imperfections, and it keeps the surface really smooth. Just like these are also the same way. They've been razor bladed, so it's a beautiful, smooth surface.
But how do you not prevent the colors from mixing and muddying the clarity of the picture?
I pray. That's about it. Yeah. I mean, I melt them very carefully with a blowtorch, but I guess it's just practice. I mean, they do muddy. And from my point of view, if you had seen this as a crayon work, it would have been playing in my basement. Along with that, which is we're really close to the end. I just wanted to kind of end off with the idea that it's all about play for me. I mean, the materials, the location, for me, being an artist is failing continuously. There's no such thing as success, because success just is a place where you stop. I want to continue to fail. So I want all the works to not be perfect enough. I don't want to be happy with where I am. I want to be someplace in the future. But I know that the work is interesting, and hopefully you can appreciate the work as it stands. But from my point of view, I've moved on, and so I do want to just kind of like say, hey, this is what I do. I play. I have a 3D printer through the university, so I printed a ton of chairs. I don't know why. Here's an example. I think they're gorgeous, and I'm not sure what that's going to be. And I also designed a ton of printable furniture along with a guy and animated it. So I thought that would be fun too. So maybe an animation is in the future, but I have no idea. So, but I wanted to show you that it doesn't matter what you do, you just have to have fun with the art, because that's what art should be. It should not be something that's serious. So thanks everybody.
Wow.